Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Familial Paradox podcast. It is for most of you, if you are in the South, I don't know how they do spring breaks all across the nation, but if you're in the South specifically, I know it is spring break week for a lot of you this week. And technically, when this comes out, it'll be Friday. So the end of spring break, and I'm praying that that it was relaxing for you as well as your kids. I know that it's a lot goes into it to help your kids have just a great week, and I just pray that it was good. I pray that it was relaxing for both parties involved, and if not, I hope that your kids had a great time. So, listen, welcome back, episode 3. Here we are. I have been, let me just get this out of the way. I've been greatly encouraged by the feedback so far of these episodes. We've only had 2 episodes out. I mean, we're only doing 1 episode a month. So literally by the end of 2026, we will only have 12 episodes. But the whole purpose of that, right, to go back to the first episode, the whole purpose of that is twofold, is that parents, we don't have time to be listening to a podcast every single week on time. Some of you, maybe you do. I don't, and I know a lot of the parents that I hang around don't. So 1 episode a month, 4th Friday every month, where we come together at the table as parents. We talk about internet safety. We talk about things that will keep our children safe from predators, that will keep our children safe from trafficking, all these different things that parents are worried about, anxious about, scared about. The whole purpose of this is to get you to a point where you are confident in what it is that we're talking about, this internet safety, and confident in what you know about predators and what you know about trafficking to keep your children safe. That's what the whole purpose of this is, not to scare you, to help you be confident. And the tagline that we've used for most of the episodes now is that this podcast, our whole goal here, Familial Paradox, is we are calling a generation of parents to a higher standard. What does that mean for you? It means that it does not mean that what you're doing right now is wrong. It does not mean that what you're doing right now is not enough, but enough. That was very Southern of me, enough. But what it does mean is that there's always more we can do as parents, and there's always some things that maybe we don't understand as parents when it comes to the internet, when it comes to predators, when it comes to all these things. So that's what it's all about, is we are calling a generation of parents to a higher standard. Today, you've seen the title, so you probably know what we're talking about. And today, you may be driving home from spring break. Maybe you're driving home. Maybe it's Sunday at this point, whether you listen on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Thank you. Speaking of me, YouTube people, if you're watching on YouTube and you have the chance, don't do this if you're driving, but if you have the chance, hey, drop in the comments. First of all, where are you listening from? And hey, share this, whether you're Apple, Spotify, YouTube, share this with some parents that you think it would help. The first episode, we talked about a few paradoxes within the realm of keeping children safe and internet safety. And then second episode, shout out to my man, Keith, who works with us with the Shepherds and Called to Rescue down in Pensacola, Florida. He is phenomenal, and especially when it comes to situational awareness and keeping people safe. He is our safety officer on our team. He keeps our team safe. So he's an awesome guy. If you didn't listen to the last episode where we were talking about situational awareness and how to train your kids in situational awareness from a young age, if you missed that, I highly recommend you go and listen to it. It's good stuff. And let Keith know, drop in the comments. Let Keith know how awesome he is. He is honestly, I don't say this lightly. He has changed my life for the better in a lot of ways, with how I think about life, with how I go about my daily, especially when I have my family with me. He's one of those very humble guys that wouldn't talk about it himself, but he's been a great blessing to me, and I hope that the last episode was a great blessing to you, and share it where you can. Hey, next month, April, we've got the big boss, Brad. He is going to be on the podcast. He leads our searches with the shepherd. So next month there'll be a conversation with him talking about essentially, I think what we talked about, because I did record this a while ago, we talked about what is the root of the problem. We have this trafficking going on. We have these predators and stuff going on. What is the root? And I think you'll enjoy the conversation. So today, boundaries. Here we are. I thinking about this podcast and with how many episodes that we're putting out and the plan to do this for, however long the Lord blesses us to do this, we have no plans to have these gigantic 2-hour, 3-hour long episodes. Like I said, I want these to be easily and digestible and available to parents, which is why my goal is to keep them somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. This one's probably going to be one of the shorter ones. I'm not gonna, as they say in the South, dilly-dally on this topic. And it is spring break, so I don't want to give you a bunch of homework to listen to an hour and a half of me talking. And if you are watching on YouTube and you notice the frame just shifted, it's because for some reason the handle that is plugged into my camera, that the audio is plugged into, that is connecting the audio to the video, died, I guess. So I had to fix that. And now here we are back. I'm a transparent person. Didn't want you to think that I'm just terrible at editing. I'm just, when it comes to figuring out if I have the right frame or not, lazy. So, should be right. Should be just about what it was. I hope you're having a great day. Let's get started. Boundaries. When we're talking about boundaries, and the reason that we're talking about this is because when we're talking about keeping our children safe, when we're talking about internet safety and keeping them safe from predators, we have to have a good foundation, right? Because we are building something. We are building this knowledge, right? That's the whole goal. And what my goal with this is to build some knowledge for parents, to have where a parent could go and listen from episode 1 forward and legitimately grow a foundation of knowledge in this area to keep their kids safe and feel confident. That's really what I want them to be able to do. So, as you know, anybody who's a builder out there, you have to have a good foundation to hold up the structure in which we are teaching. And so I'm a pastor, I'm a missionary, so let me bring some scripture to you. Let me grab my Bible. Matthew 7:24 through 27. I know you've heard about it, but I'm just going to reiterate it. It says, and this is in, I believe it's NIV. I have a bunch of Bibles, so I think this one's NIV. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell in a great crash. It's Matthew 7:24 through 27. Here's the thing. Scripturally and in life, which you can basically base your entire life off of biblical principles, and I recommend that you do. But it doesn't really matter what you're talking about, whether it's raising your kids, whether it's making sure that you have enough retirement, whether it's making sure you have a good job, making sure you have a good house and all these things. It starts at the foundation. How did you start? And if you didn't start well and the foundation is not done well, then what you're going to have later will crumble. So, in my thinking of what we should talk about today, boundaries is the foundation of all of this. Because listen, it's not just about, I don't want to let my kids be on Instagram. I don't want to let my kids be on Snapchat, because those are the issues. Instagram, Snapchat, let me let you in on something here, and I don't have time to explain this right now. Instagram, Snapchat, the phone, the video game console, those are not the issue. Can they become an issue and can they cause an issue? Sure. But the foundational principles that we're going to talk about today, a lot of times are the underlying issue, the root. And what we're trying to get to is the root, because if there is an issue, whether it be with pornography, whether it be with predators, whether it be with grooming, whether it be with trafficking, whatever it is, social media addiction, whatever it is, the root has to be killed. The root has to be dealt with. And I'm going to tell you right now, especially if you're a person watching and you say you have an addiction to pornography, the phone isn't the problem. Now, the phone does give you access to the stimulus that has created the problem. So yeah, maybe you should get a flip phone. Yeah, maybe you should take a break from your phone for a little bit, lock it down, put Ever Accountable on it, whatever. But if that's all you do, then the issue will remain. So here's the thing about boundaries is a huge part of parenting is making sure that we set our children on a firm foundation, biblically, spiritually, in life, educationally, right? Financially, set them on a firm foundation. In the foundation, keeping your kids safe from predators is boundaries. Boundaries is one of the biggest things that you can talk about when it comes to keeping your kids safe from predators. Why? Why is it one of the biggest things that you can talk about? Because boundaries are what, or maybe lack thereof, boundaries, is what predators will exploit every single time. If they figure out that there's a lack of a boundary somewhere, they will exploit that and they will push the boundaries. And if we have not raised our children in a way that they will give pushback to someone pushing their boundaries, then anybody can manipulate them for the most part. Every boundary you set for your child changes what I just referred to as the baseline. So here's the thing is that, and you may have remember from episode 2 where we're talking about situational awareness with Keith, is there is a baseline to your day. There is a baseline to your life. There's a baseline to everything that you're doing, and it's all patterns, right? It's patterns of you get up, you drink coffee, you eat breakfast, you go to work, you come back, you take a shower, you play with your kids, you put your kids to sleep. It's all just a cycle, and it's a baseline for your life, which is why when something outside of that happens, somebody passing away, your house catching on fire, your car breaking down, getting in a wreck, whatever it is, when something outside of that baseline happens, that's why it is so jarring to us, is because we as humans, we live within patterns. And you may think, well, I'm a person, I live on the edge, and I do things spontaneously all the time, and I have no patterns. I promise you, even you have patterns that you live by. They may not be as strong as others, but you have patterns that you live by. And I think taking a chance or taking a moment to sit and think about what are these patterns that I am living in, and what are these patterns, teaching my children, what are these baselines that I am setting my children up for. Anything that you set up to be the baseline for your child will and can be used by someone else in a nefarious way, which is not what we want, right? Here's the thing, is that everything you do in your life sets a baseline for not only your life, but your children. And that is why when things change, we feel it heavily. Because when things change, the baseline has shifted even for a moment. It may not shift forever, shift for a moment, right? It shifts and it goes to something completely different where you don't necessarily maybe want to be. And so you try to get back to baseline as much as possible. And, a lot of things when you're outside of that baseline, outside of that pattern that you typically live by, and you're having something especially emotional go on, you tend to want to do things from said baseline to help bring you peace, right? Whether that's having that morning cup of coffee, whether that's watching that show that you're so connected with that it makes you feel peace. Whatever it is, you tend to revert back to a baseline where you were more peaceful, you were more happy when things that are jarring are happening in your life. So here's my question. Like I said, this is not going to be long, guys. This episode is not going to be long. What baselines with boundaries are we setting for our children? What baselines with boundaries are we setting for our children? And I'm going to go through a couple here, and you can have a conversation with your spouse on maybe what you're doing. And this goes for grandparents. This goes for legal guardians. This goes for parents. This goes for whoever's listening. Maybe even you don't have kids yet, but you're listening to this because you want to be prepared for when you do. Then hey, you're starting at the beginning right here. So here's number one. Here's one of them. And we talked about this a little bit in the first episode, is manipulation. Manipulation. What kind of boundaries are we setting for our children when it comes to manipulation? And you may be sitting here and thinking, well, I don't do anything that manipulates people. I don't do this. I don't do that. But really take a moment and examine, think about how you speak, think about how you and your spouse do things. Think about if you're the grandparents, if you're the aunt, the uncle, whoever you are, think about how you do things around said kid. And here's the thing is that most people, what I've seen at least, there are many different types of manipulation. And obviously you have a master manipulator who knows what they're doing when they're doing it. But there is this type of manipulation that I've began to see that lies within the family household, and people don't mean anything by it. They're not doing it with evil intentions. They're not doing it with the intention to actually manipulate somebody, but they are doing it nonetheless in a manipulative way, essentially because that's how it's always been done in their family. That's how their parents did it. That's how their parents' did it. And so they're just continuing to do it. They're continuing on the cycle, right? And it just seems like normal life, and you have no bad intentions. So don't get me wrong. If you do any of these things, I'm not calling you out for any type of bad intention. I'm just saying that it's something that you've been raised to think is normal. So if you were raised to think it's normal, your kids are going to be raised to think it's normal, and it is a break in the chain or a chink in the armor, whatever you want to call it, in this baseline that can leave doors open for a predator to manipulate. For anybody to manipulate. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically a predator, but it could just be a person who wants to manipulate you in life, because there's enough people out there like that, right? So manipulation, the way it manifests in families a lot of times is you have certain things like the whole question of, if you love me, right? If you love me, you will do this. And a lot of times, most families, it's not anything nefarious. Like I was just explaining, it's just, hey, if you love me, you'll go get me the ice cream out of the freezer because you don't want to get off the couch. So you're saying that to your kids. If you love me, you'll go get this out of the fridge for me, or you'll go get me a snack or whatever, which seems normal off the front, and it may be very normal to you, but it is in its very foundation of that question. And the following of it, if you love me, you will do this. Has a manipulative nature. And if you are using things like that, a predator can come in, or someone who is grooming can come in and can say, if you love me, you will send me naked pictures. If you love me, you'll sleep with this person for me so that we can make rent. And it becomes something that is normal because it's something that they've heard all their lives. Now, when they heard it from their parents, it wasn't in an evil form, but now it is, and who can tell the difference? Especially a child, right? So, we have these things that happen, and manipulation also can come in a lot of different ways, of where you use somebody specifically for their talents, or you use somebody specifically for what they're good in, right? So like, the whole cliche thing of using a nerd to do your homework, and then you're doing something for them that is in a form that is blackmail, that is manipulation, getting them to do certain things, sending nudes to people, and them saying, well, I'm going to post these on the internet. If you don't send me more, or you don't do this, send me money. Sextortion, a thing that's happening based in manipulation, right? Grooming is based in manipulation, which is a predator who is grooming a child is based in manipulation. So you have all these different things that are based in manipulation. And if we have it as a part of our family structure, then we are setting a baseline that manipulation is inherently okay. And that, to me, is not okay. Another way of manipulation is lying, right? You can manipulate just about any situation you want by lying, because the person who paints the picture is the person typically who will get to tell the story. The person who has the prettiest, the person who has the most beautiful words, maybe is a better way of saying it, is the person that will typically be listened to. The person who is charismatic will typically be listened to. The person who is more rambunctious and using their hands and doing all these things will typically be the person that is going to gain the attention. So for a person, the Bible talks about, obviously, lying is something that as a believer we should not do, but lying is a part of manipulation. Lying is painting a picture of a situation in the way that you see it, whether that is how it actually is or not, so that you can paint a picture for somebody else who does not know what the situation is, so that you can bring them into whether into alliance with you to support your narrative, or rather to manipulate them in a way where they're going to go and do something that they shouldn't do, to defend you or to defend a certain situation that may not even be real. So lying is a big thing. And even little lies, white lies, right? People talk about white lies and they're like, oh, the white lies, that's just fun and we're having fun. It's okay. It's not. It is setting a baseline for manipulation. It is setting a baseline that lies are okay. It's setting a baseline that keeping secrets is okay, which is not good. Not good when it comes to predators and children. We do not want children to think that lies are okay. And that, we talked about the whole "if you love me" thing, which seems very simple. On the other hand, you have this grandparents or aunt and uncle or, whoever it is that is taking a child. And mom or dad, you may even do this between each other. Take a child and, you take them and you get some kind of crazy dessert, ice cream, this big sundae with brownies and all this sugar in it. And you have it and you eat it with your grandchildren, or you eat it with your niece and nephew, or you eat it even with your own children. And in having it, you say, hey, let's not tell your parents. And it's fun. You say it in a fun way. Typically, it's like, hey, don't tell mommy about this. And you're giving them a bunch of sugar. Don't tell daddy about this, and you're giving them this, giving them that. And seems very, very normal. And in a way it is, just because a lot of families do that, right? I've even, preaching to the choir here, I've even caught myself posing to do that, like getting ready to do that, and then I kind of catch myself and like, nope, don't do that with my son. But you have this issue therein where it's very normal, seems normal, but you are setting a baseline for the child to keep secrets. You're setting a baseline for the child to keep something from their parents. And a predator will exploit that every single time. Every single time. So the whole, giving them ice cream, giving them a popsicle and saying, hey, don't tell your parents. Please, for the love, let's not do that anymore, because that is so setting up a baseline for somebody to come in and say, hey, don't tell your parents that you're sending me these pictures. Don't tell your parents that we're talking. Don't tell your parents that we FaceTime every night. Don't tell your parents that we are having sex. Don't do this. Don't do that. And it's setting a baseline that can start from a very, very young age, all because we let it creep into our life and we let it become something normal. We do not want these things to become normal, because once they become normal to somebody, that can be exploited. And that's the whole process of grooming, right? Body autonomy. I'm going to go through these quickly, right? I know I've spent a little time here, but bodily autonomy for children is something that is very, very, very important. Number one, use the correct anatomy. I know maybe you've heard this, but if you call the private parts for your child, fun terms, funny terms, things like that are not the real terms, a predator will exploit that every single time. If a predator figures out that a child has been taught these particular things, they are going to exploit that. Because if you can talk about it in a non-correct term, for example, I know a lot of parents and a lot of things, use the term cookie or use the term, a couple, I don't even know. I'm not even going to go into it. A lot of different terms. We use correct autonomy in our house. So I can't even think of a whole lot of them, but they use the correct autonomy, use the correct names for parts of the body, because if you use playful names, people can come in and exploit that, and your child just sees it as playful, and they see it as something that is normal. Whereas if you say, hey, and listen, content warning for what I'm about to say, if you've got this playing throughout the car, but if you teach your son, I'm going to say son because I have a son. If you teach your son, hey, this is your penis, and no one is allowed to touch this, right? It's a lot different than using some playful term and making it into some kind of a joke, right? So we want to set a right baseline, but bodily autonomy is also manifested in other ways as well. And one of the ways that it is forced physical affection, right? We have to set boundaries correctly for our children. And how are we setting boundaries correctly? If we are coming at it from the stance of forcing our children to show physical affection in moments when they do not want to, right? So example is your child, 4, 5, 6 years old, maybe even a little older, whatever. They have their days where they're not too touchy. They don't want to be touched, whatever. And then maybe you have a kid that wants to hug and snuggle all the time. Maybe you have a kid that only wants to do that every now and then. Whatever it is, if you are at a family member's house, and this is going to cut deep for some people, but if you're at a family member's house and you are taking your child, you're going to leave, and you tell your child, go hug grandma, go hug aunt, whoever. Go hug uncle, whoever. And your child says no. If they say in that moment, hey, I don't want to hug right now. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And now this is twofold. We have twofold things that are going on. Because the family members aren't trained correctly, in my mind, because a lot of them will get offended at this, which is so wrong. So wrong. Now, but you, on the other hand, don't want to hurt someone's feelings. There's a bug flying around. I don't know where that came from. I'm in the interior of a church gym. How a bug got in here, no idea. If you are that type person, you're like, you don't want to hurt feelings, you don't want to cause issues, so you say, hey, I don't care what you don't want to do, go hug them. Go give them a hug, and you force them to do it after they have displayed not wanting to do so, after they have said no. You are then breaking a boundary for them. You may think, oh, well, we don't want to hurt grandma whoever's feelings. We don't want to hurt aunt whoever's feelings. Listen, if that's the biggest problem there, then conversations just need to be had between you and that family member of that you are going to raise your kids with correct boundaries, with boundaries that cannot be broken just because you don't want to hurt feelings. Because the problem there, let me tell you, the problem there of you not wanting to hurt said family member's feelings, so you're forcing your kid to go give them a hug, the problem there is between you and your family member. Your kid does not need to be brought into that. Okay? Listen, I'm stepping on some toes here because this is something I feel very, very passionate about. Because you are teaching your kid in that moment that their no doesn't really mean no. That even if they say no, that boundary doesn't have to be firmly enforced. They can be forced to do something. No doesn't really mean no, right? What does the Bible say? The Bible says, "Yet let your yes be yes and your no be no." Now, bringing that into this situation, right? Contextually in the Bible, you may think, well, that's not this isn't the exact situation. But let's take that, what I just said, and let's use that in this instance with your children. And I know sometimes we have to make our children do things that they don't want to do. Eat broccoli, do homework, things like that. That is not what I'm talking about. I know sometimes that it's going to take a little bit of training, and it's going to take a little bit of raising your children up to do the things that they should do, because nobody wants to do homework. Some kids don't want to eat vegetables. Some kids don't want to eat whatever. Don't want to take a shower. Don't want to put deodorant on, whatever, right? We have to train our kids to do those things, and that is more of a training and a bending and helping them become the person they should be, and that is not what we're talking about here. We are talking about their body, and they are in this moment saying that they do not want to physically show affection to someone. They do not want to hug someone. They do not want to talk to someone, whatever it is, and we as parents should enforce that boundary hard. And we should enforce that boundary with no regret. Because if you push that boundary and let your child realize that their no doesn't mean no, their no doesn't actually mean no, of when a predator comes in, if a predator comes in and begins to groom them and wants to do things sexually, or wants the kid to send nudes or whatever it is, and your child says no, and the person pushes, right? And says, oh, well, actually, yes, we are going to do this, and begins to get physical or whatever it is, your child is going to revert back to that. It's going to show up in their adulthood. It's going to show up later on because it's something that has been set as a baseline for them, for their life. They've been forced to show affection. They've been forced to hug people when they said no. They've been forced to touch people when they said no. And now here we are. So something that may seem so simple becomes something so big. It becomes an issue, becomes a problem. And this is something that we need to do. And parents, I don't want to look like the crazy parent. I don't want to look like the parent that's causing issues. Your child, their safety, their ability to not be manipulated, their ability to grow into the person that they are confident in who they want to be, that they are confident that you are there to protect them. I know that's heavy, but that relies on you, parent. That relies on you. You have to pay attention to these things, and you have to back your kid up in some of these situations. You have to back your kid up and say, well, listen, they're not really wanting to hug right now, so we'll get you later. Another one, oh my goodness. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I shouldn't. Another one is kisses. Because you're going a step further there. A hug is a hug, right? You can maybe argue that away. A hug's a hug, although I do not agree. Kisses. Forcing your child to kiss a family member. Forcing your child to kiss an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent. Now, whether it be on the cheek, whatever. I know there's families out there that do the whole kissing on the lips, and we'll leave that for another day. But maybe it's on the cheek. But no, if your child says they don't want to do that and you force them to do that, that's even a step further than the hug. Because a kiss is something that is extremely more intimate than a hug. And I'm not saying intimate in a way of a sexual way, but just intimate as person to person. And, it's something that if your child says they do not want to do that and you force them to do that, my goodness, are we getting into a dangerous territory to where another adult, a predatorial adult, can come into the situation and say, hey, give me a kiss. And your child's like, well, I don't want to give you a kiss. And he's like, well, come on, we're family, or we're this or we're that. Because like we talked about in the first episode, there are a lot of predators that come from within. So listen, we have to back our children up when it comes to physical affection, when it comes to their bodies, and not having to share it with people they don't want to share it with, because that will show up down the line. The baseline and the boundaries we set will show up down the line, and people will exploit it. Here's the thing, and this is going to be my closing, if you will, of this episode. Here's the thing, is that a wolf in sheep's clothing will look like a sheep. They will talk like one, and they will do their very, very best to act like one. But here's the thing, is the wolf will never understand the baseline that the sheep have. A sheep, the flock together, they, when you watch any kind of farm animal, we have chickens at our house. When you watch them and they are doing just their normal things and they're pecking around, scratching around, bok-bocking around, that's for all the kids. My son, he loves saying bok-bok. He literally goes down to our chickens and screams bok-bok at them. And I'm like, brother, they can hear you if you just say it normally. But he gets enthusiastic about it. But either way, if you watch these animals, they have a baseline. And the thing is that when this baseline is broken, when there's a predator, when there's a sound that scares them or whatever, when this baseline is broken, they get quiet and they stay still and they look. Sheep do the same thing. I've never owned sheep, so it may be a little bit of difference there, but I know for most farm animals, when the baseline is broken, they come together, they stop doing whatever it was that they were doing that would be normal, and they begin to look for the danger, right? So there's a baseline. The wolf, however, comes into the flock of sheep. The wolf will never inherently be able to understand the baseline of the sheep. The wolf will only be able to do its very best to blend into said baseline, but even at the end of the day, they will not be able to fully blend in because they are not a sheep, right? So when you have predators who are coming in, if you set these baselines for your children that are firm and strong, that, hey, we do not lie, we do not keep secrets, we do not manipulate, we do not call our body playful and fun things, we do not force physical affection, we do not, our no means no, our yes means yes, what we say matters. If we raise our kids in these firm foundational principles of boundaries, a predator can come in and can try to exploit those specific things, but they're going to meet, right, a door that has been closed years before, because you as a parent have been paying attention, you've been raising your kid in a way that boundaries mean something, and that your kid will have boundaries no matter what. And so the wolf can come in, the predator can come in and try to blend in. But if your child knows there are boundaries and is being supported by their parents in having strong boundaries, then the predator won't be able to blend in as easily into their life, and your child will recognize the change in the baseline of how this adult is treating me versus other adults. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's hitting home for you. But here's the thing. I do not want to scare you. I never want to scare parents. Because listen, what I was talking about, today's the day. Start today. If you're like, well, I've been doing that and I've been doing this, start today. I don't have the time to go in specifically all the way into manipulation, manipulative behavior, manipulative language. I mentioned a few things there, right? As a parent, I say this in my internet safety trainings. I recommend one of the best things you can do as a parent is do a little bit of research in your off time, whether it's reading a book, if you're a person who reads books, or doing research on ChatGPT. First of all, if you're doing it on ChatGPT, if you're doing it on Google, fact check your stuff, but do the research on manipulative, it's hard to say, behavior and language. And if you have any of those things that it teaches you with, that you're kind of just doing and you didn't know it was manipulative and you're doing it to your children, cut it off. Because we have to keep our kids safe at all costs. at all costs. And we have to raise them in a way where their boundaries mean something. But I'm not here, like I said, to scare you. Because here's my question to you, or here's my question that you may be thinking. Does this mean that every child who is raised with no set in stone boundaries, if every child who is raised with no boundaries, or maybe they're raised where they have some of these boundaries but they don't have others, does this mean that every one of these children is going to be preyed upon by someone who's wanting to exploit them or a predator? No. Statistically, the FBI estimates that there's somewhere around 500,000 predators active online daily. Right? That's not enough predators to be one predator for every child. So you could argue it away, well, this is too much work for me, so I'm not going to really pay attention to it. I'll keep it in mind, but I'm not going to implement it. And so you just let it go because, there's not what are the chances, right, of a predator reaching out to your child? You may think that. Online, if your children are on social media, it's actually very high that they get reached out to at some point by some kind of person with an ulterior motive. But in real life, you may think, well, who knows? Well, that's the thing is that you don't know. That's the thing is that you could very well be related to a predator and you don't even know. You could be working with a predator and you don't even know. No one typically knows until the person gets arrested, right? And then it's, I'm so confused, and how could they do this? They would never do that. I know them. But there's behavior that you could have noticed and recognized, or maybe you wrote it off because, that's Uncle so-and-so. He's always been like that, right? So does it mean that every child that does not have set boundaries is going to be preyed upon? No. But what does it mean? It means that if your child grows up without these boundaries and has manipulation blended in and has all these things that lies are okay and that secrets are okay and all these things from baseline standpoint, what does it mean? It means that if a predator, if a groomer were to ever come into contact with your child, if a predator were ever to reach out to your child, if a predator were ever to approach your child and your child did not have these boundaries, or maybe these boundaries were set up in a wrong way where secrets are okay and lies are okay and that's just the baseline, they will, at that point, 100%, the predator will exploit them. The predator will, and I'm talking about these situations, these chinks in the armor, the lies, the secrets, the bodily autonomy, all of that. The predator will exploit them if we do not set up good boundaries in these areas. It will happen. So, yes, you can look at it as if it ever happens, and it is a statistical, depending on where you're at, right? Where you live, the type of family you're in, all these things changes the percentage statistically of your kids being susceptible and around people like this. But I would rather raise my kid up with firm boundaries in these areas and raise my kid up in a way that they should go with these foundational things so that if anything like that ever happens, that they can stand their ground firm and come to me and say, hey, this person reached out to me is wanting to do these things, and I don't want to do them and all these things. We want a child to be able to do that rather than fold under the pressure of someone who is manipulating them in every single way. Here's the thing, parents, is that I want to encourage you that you are doing great. I don't know you. I don't know who's listening. I don't know what your story is. I don't know how many kids you have. I don't know where you live. Don't know any of that. But you're doing great. Because here's the thing is that if you are willing to, and I'm not saying that my podcast is the end all be all of any of this, but if you're willing to listen to this and learn, if you're willing to read books that help you learn how to raise your children better, if you're willing to learn certain things to connect with your children, if you're willing to be present in your child's life, if you're willing to implement some of these boundaries for your kids to help keep them safe, you are doing great. You're doing fine. You may think, well, I'm not doing this one thing, or I'm not doing that other thing, or maybe I haven't done any of this and I'm starting from the ground and I have no idea what to do. It feels like everything's on fire, which is why I'm doing this podcast the way I'm doing it, where it's not everything at once. It's certain subjects at a time. You are doing good. And I just want to encourage you that obviously we can all do better, but your very decision to listen and want to learn these things is evidence of you caring, is evidence of you doing good. And yes, it's going to take time to implement some of these things and do better, but we can do that. We can grow together. I want to thank you for joining me at the table here. I'm going to pray for you as I end here. And let me tell you this, if you have any questions regarding these situations, if you have any topics that you want to hear our opinions on, please do let me know. Drop it in the YouTube comments. Reach out to me on Facebook. Reach out to me however you can get to us. We have an Instagram. So reach out to us there. Send us a message, and we will get it addressed. And if you have something that, I don't want it to be public, but I have this situation that I'm going through with my kid, and I would really love some specific, opinions on certain situations, please reach out to us. Like I said, we aren't the end all be all, but here's the thing is that we are willing, and we are willing to listen, and we are willing to tell you what we think. So, Father, I just want to pray for the parent right now that is listening or watching. And I just want to ask that you would bless them, Lord, right now in the name of Jesus, that you would put your hand on them, that you would touch their children, that you would touch every situation that they're having to deal with right now, Father, and that you would bring peace, Father, and that you would bring healing if there's any sickness in their home. And Lord, I ask that you would just be with them as they go, Father, and help them to be a confident and a strong, courageous parent to help keep their kids safe. In Jesus' name, amen.